The acquisition of their own cottage was meant to herald a fresh, joyous chapter. However, the housewarming celebration took an unforeseen turn, gifting them a rather unwelcome surprise. The in-laws arrived not merely with presents, but with an entire moving truck packed to the brim. "These are our son's rooms, after all, joint property," the mother-in-law chirped, already envisioning herself as the undisputed mistress of the household. "So, we'll be living together now, and we'll give your little apartment to Lenka." This cheerful pronouncement was accompanied by a satisfied smile as she pictured herself firmly in charge. "Hello, dear listeners. It's a pleasure to welcome you to my channel. I have a new and engaging story for you today. Enjoy." Alla Sergeyevna gazed at the large truck parked beside their brand-new cottage, a simmering fury building within her. 3 months prior, she had inherited a substantial sum from Aunt Nina, the only relative who had ever truly stood by her. Aunt Nina had bequeathed her a 3-bedroom apartment located in the city center, which Alla promptly sold. The proceeds were sufficient to purchase this spacious cottage in the suburban countryside. It was a charming 2-story dwelling, complete with an attic, a small garden, and a garage. She had meticulously handled all the paperwork, registering the property solely in her own name. Her husband, Kirill, had shown little interest in the finer details, and she hadn't felt the need to involve him. After all, it was an inheritance, her personal property, and that was that. Alla held the position of chief accountant at a construction firm, earning a respectable income of approximately $150,000. She possessed a knack for saving and meticulous financial planning. Over the course of their 10 years of marriage, she had learned to rely solely on her own resources. Kirill worked as a sales manager at a car dealership, bringing home around $80,000, but half of that was routinely allocated to his parents. It might be for his mother, Olga Viktorovna's medications one month, or for his father, Viktor Stepanovich's new car the next, or perhaps for his sister, Lena's unending financial needs. Alla had remained silent, enduring these demands, quietly accumulating both resentment and funds in her personal account. When she announced her purchase of the house, Kirill had reacted with the unbridled enthusiasm of a child. He had immediately contacted his parents, enthusiastically describing the magnificent cottage, its numerous rooms, and the picturesque views. Alla had observed the gleam in his eyes and sensed he was already formulating a plan, but she remained quiet, waiting to see how events would unfold. And now, today, was the housewarming. She had prepared a lavish spread and invited both sets of parents along with a few close friends. Everything was progressing beautifully until a large truck rumbled into the driveway. Viktor Stepanovich was at the wheel, with Olga Viktorovna beside him, and the truck bed was laden with boxes, suitcases, and old furniture. Alla stepped out onto the porch. Her father-in-law was already beginning to unload the belongings, while her mother-in-law, resplendent in her signature floral dress and sporting a triumphant smile, approached her. "Alochka, my dear, we decided to give you a wonderful surprise," Olga Viktorovna exclaimed, embracing her daughter-in-law as if they were the dearest of friends. This was ironic, considering that over their 10 years together, she had never addressed Alla by anything other than "that wife of yours." "We're moving in with you. After all, this is our son's house too. Joint property, you see. We'll give your little apartment to Lenka." Kirill stood nearby, a vacant smile plastered on his face, looking utterly clueless. Alla glanced from him to her mother-in-law, then to the truck overflowing with their possessions, and then she began to laugh. She laughed heartily, a genuine, unrestrained peal that brought tears to her eyes. Olga Viktorovna appeared taken aback. "What are you so happy about, dear?" she inquired, bewildered. "I'm rejoicing in your sheer audacity, Olga Viktorovna," Alla replied, wiping away her tears. "It seems the time has come to share some rather unwelcome news. This house is mine, and mine alone. I purchased it with money I received as an inheritance from my aunt. Kirill has absolutely no claim to this purchase. The deed is registered solely in my name." A profound silence descended. Even the guests who had emerged to witness the commotion fell silent. Viktor Stepanovich froze, a box suspended in his hands. Olga Viktorovna's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Kirill was the first to recover. Allah, what are you talking about? Everything we have is joint property since we're married. An inheritance is personal property, Allah responded calmly. Refer to the family code. Article 36. Property acquired by one of the spouses as a gift or through inheritance is considered their personal property. I sold my aunt's apartment and bought this house with my own money, registered in my name. You've completely lost your mind. Olga Viktorovna's face flushed crimson. This is a family home. Are you really trying to kick us out? I did not invite you to move in, Allah stated, crossing her arms. You arrived unannounced with a moving truck without even asking, and you intended to give your apartment to Lena. What an interesting division of assets, wouldn't you say? A new and spacious place for yourselves, an old and familiar one for your daughter, and for us, a shared existence with you. Kirill, her mother-in-law shrieked. Do you hear what she's saying? Kirill's face turned pale. He clearly had not anticipated such a turn of events. He approached his wife, attempting to take her hand, but Allah pulled away. We will discuss this at home, he hissed. We are at home, Allah met his gaze. If you wish to discuss it in my home, by all means, but your parents will not be living here. Viktor Stepanovich placed the box back into the truck. He was a man of few words, accustomed to his wife making all the decisions, but even he now understood the gravity of the situation. Perhaps we were mistaken in this endeavor, Olya, he murmured. Shut up, his wife snapped. Alochka, surely you understand I meant no harm. I simply thought a larger house would provide more space. We'll help you with household chores, with the grandchildren when they arrive. There will be no grandchildren, Allah cut in decisively. At least not from Kirill. I filed for divorce a week ago. The pronouncement landed like a bombshell. Kirill grew even paler. What did you hear? Allah continued, her voice firm. I'm tired, Kirill. Tired of supporting not only you, but also your entire family. And I'm tired of you rushing off with money every time your mother calls. I'm tired of Lena considering it acceptable to borrow from us and never repay. For 10 years, I was convenient. No longer. Olga Viktorovna clutched her chest. Oh, I feel faint. Is there a doctor present? Allah nodded towards one of the guests. Igor Valerievich, would you please attend to my mother-in-law? The doctor, an elderly man with kind eyes, approached and checked her pulse. Everything is normal, Olga Viktorovna. Your blood pressure is stable. No need to pretend. The mother-in-law visibly deflated. Viktor Stepanovich was already climbing into the truck's cab. Kirill wavered between his wife and his mother, unsure of how to proceed. Allah, please, let's discuss this calmly, he pleaded. I truly didn't know they were planning to move in. Honestly, I didn't. Allah shook her head. Your eyes lit up when I mentioned the house. You called them immediately, described everything. Do you think I didn't hear you talking to your mother? Now there will be enough room for everyone. You planned this from the very beginning. Kirill lowered his gaze, realizing further argument would be futile. The guests gradually departed. The housewarming, as intended, never materialized. Olga Viktorovna and Viktor Stepanovich drove away in their truck, their belongings entirely unloaded. Kirill remained, sitting at the kitchen table, drinking vodka straight from the bottle. Did you really file for divorce? He asked when Allah entered to collect some dishes. Yes, because of the money, because of the disrespect, Allah replied, sitting opposite him. You never asked what I wanted. You simply acted in ways that were convenient for you and your parents. I was a source of funds and free labor, cook, clean, do laundry, and support everyone. I didn't realize you felt so burdened. You never gave it a second thought. Kirill left for his parents' place that very night. Allah remained alone in her new home. It was quiet, peaceful, and incredibly liberating. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Kirill attempted to claim a share of the house, hiring an attorney, but the lawyer quickly explained that inherited property was not subject to division. Allah didn't even smile when Kirill exited the courtroom with a dejected expression. She was indifferent. Olga Viktorovna called several times, attempting to play on Allah's sympathy, lamenting Kirill's suffering and her own sleepless nights. Allah listened in silence, then simply blocked the number. Lena, Kirill's younger sister, got married, and did indeed move into her parents' apartment. However, 6 months later, her husband Gennady, unable to tolerate the constant presence of his in-laws, filed for divorce. Lena found herself left with 2 children and no job, residing in the apartment with her parents. Olga Viktorovna complained to anyone who would listen, but no one could offer assistance. A year later, Kirill remarried a colleague, a young saleswoman who had no concept of managing finances and adored his mother. Olga Viktorovna was ecstatic. Alla learned of this inadvertently through social media and merely shrugged. 2 years later, a new man entered Alla's life, settling into her home. Igor Valerievich, the very doctor who had exposed the mother-in-law's pretense at the housewarming. He was a widower, calm and cultured. He made no demands, exerted no pressure, simply offered his presence. They married quietly, without elaborate celebrations. Alla wore a simple white dress, he a suit. They signed the papers, then enjoyed a quiet dinner for 2 at a restaurant. "Are you happy?" Igor asked when they returned home. "Yes," Alla replied. It was the truth. A year later, they welcomed a daughter, little Nina, named in honor of the aunt who had given Alla a chance at a new life. Igor was a wonderful father, rising in the night, changing diapers, singing lullabies. Alla watched him, marveling at the realization that such happiness was possible. One day, while strolling through the park with their baby stroller, she encountered Kirill. He looked older, gaunt, his eyes etched with weariness. His young wife, visibly pregnant, walked beside him, followed by Olga Viktorovna, who was animatedly recounting something. "Hello," Kirill said. "Hello," Alla replied. He glanced into the stroller, spotting the sleeping Nina. "She's beautiful. Thank you." They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Olga Viktorovna noticed Alla, pursed her lips, and deliberately turned away. Kirill's wife looked on with curiosity. "Well, goodbye," Kirill said, and continued on his way. Alla watched them go. There was no anger, no resentment, only a faint regret for the years lost, for not having made this decision sooner. When Nina turned 3, Alla opened her own accounting firm. Igor was supportive, assisting with the finances. The business flourished, with clients recommending her services to their friends. Within 2 years, she managed a staff of 5 employees and was contemplating expansion. The house, which was meant to be a source of strife and shared living with her mother-in-law, had transformed into their cherished family nest. Alla cultivated a vibrant flower garden, and Igor built a playground for Nina. Nina grew up a happy child, surrounded by love. One evening, as they sat on the veranda sipping tea, Alla remarked, "You know, I'm grateful for that entire situation with the truck and the housewarming." "Why?" Igor inquired, surprised. "Because it was the breaking point. I would have endured for much longer, festering with resentment, destroying myself." As it happened, everything unfolded quickly and decisively. They inadvertently revealed the festering wound themselves. Igor smiled and kissed her temple. "It's a good thing you laughed then, instead of crying." "Tears would have been a sign of weakness," Alla countered, shaking her head. "And I was tired of being weak." She saw Kirill a few more times from a distance. He continued to live with his parents. His wife had given birth to 2 children and had rapidly transformed into a worn-out homemaker. Olga Viktorovna still commanded everyone's attention, while Viktor Stepanovich remained silent. Lena had still not settled her personal life, working as a sales associate. Her children grew up under their grandmother's watchful eye. Alla felt no schadenfreude. She was simply indifferent. Her life had taken a different path, one of light, tranquility, and profound meaning. When Nina turned 5, the family relocated to another city. Igor had been offered a position as head of a department at a prominent hospital. Alla seamlessly transitioned her business to an online platform. The house was sold quickly and profitably. The new owners were a young couple without relatives, eager to start a family. "May this house bring you happiness," Alla said, handing over the keys. "Thank you," the young woman smiled. "Did it bring you happiness?" "It did," Alla nodded. "It taught me to stand up for myself." In their new city, they purchased an apartment in a quiet neighborhood. Nina enrolled in an excellent kindergarten. Igor became engrossed in his work. Alla finally exhaled. Sometimes in the evenings she would recall that day, the truck, the boxes, her mother-in-law's delighted face, Kirill's smile, and each time she would smile because it was the day of her liberation. 10 years had passed since that ill-fated housewarming. Alla occasionally browsed social media to see what her former acquaintances were up to. Kirill had divorced his second wife and lived alone, still working at the same auto repair shop. Olga Viktorovna had passed away from a stroke. Viktor Stepanovich spent his remaining years in a nursing home. His children couldn't agree on who would care for him. Lena married for the third time and moved to a village. Alla closed the page. Nina was doing her homework at the table. Igor was reading a medical journal. A typical evening for an ordinary, happy family. "Mom, are we going somewhere for the summer?" Nina asked. "We are. Would you like to go to the sea?" "Yes." "Can I sunbathe and swim with Dad?" "Of course." Alla walked to the window. Beyond it lay the city, its lights shimmering. It was her life, the one she had chosen for herself. And that choice had begun the moment she had laughed in her mother-in-law's face and had not been afraid to speak the truth. Sometimes, a single minute of courage can change everything. And thank God, she had found the strength for that 1 minute